The Minnesota Vikings fall 37-10 on Sunday Night Football against the Green Bay Packers. Now, this is pretty much what we expected. We didn't expect the Vikings to go out there with Sean Mannion, maybe the worst backup quarterback in football, go out there and somehow come up with a win. But what we also didn't expect is the Minnesota Vikings to be eliminated from the playoffs, having two straight seasons where they have an under 500 record, and the Packers to have the one seed. The Minnesota Vikings handed the one seed to the Green Bay Packers after putting up no fight in the entire game. Our largest play of the game was a Garrett Bradbury immaculate reception where he picked up 24 yards. Yeah, 24 yards was our biggest play of the game. Dalvin Cook had under 2 yards per carry. Just an awful performance offensively and defensively. I mean, we didn't have high expectations for our defense, but our offense did not show up at all. Even without Adam Thielen, without Kirk Cousins, our offense looked terrible without those two players. But 2 straight years with a losing record. And this is why I'm going to talk about the future for this team. And that is not Kirk Cousins. That is not Mike Zimmer. That is not Clint Kubiak. You can throw all the stats you want at me saying Kirk Cousins is great. Now, I understand he's a great quarterback. I don't care. I want to win. We have 2 straight seasons with losing records. 4 seasons Kirk has been here. We only have been in the playoffs one of those seasons. 0 division titles in 4 years. We have to look to the future for this team. Yes, it starts with the head coach. Yes, it starts with a new play caller. That would likely be our head coach. But you have to look to a new quarterback as well. So that's what we're going to talk about on today's episode. So starting it off with Sean Mannion. Now, Sean Mannion surprised me. He proved me wrong. I said he was going to throw more interceptions than touchdowns. Sean Mannion threw his first passing touchdown in the NFL after 6 years of being in the NFL. So we're not going to credit him much there. But again, against a Packers secondary, did play well. Sean Mannion had 61 completion percentage, 189 passing yards, a touchdown, and an 84.1 passer rating. So not good stats, but when you look at him for being a backup quarterback, that's solid. We did get to see a little bit of Kellen Mond. I would have liked to see more of Kellen Mond. I would have liked to see Mond start this game because I want to see what he's able to do because his ceiling is much higher than Mannion, who Mannion is Mannion. The reason why the Vikings decided to play Sean Mannion here was there was 2 reasons. For one, Kellen Mond sucks. I mean, Kirk Cousins being out was a lose-lose situation. It didn't matter who you played, you were likely going to lose this game. You needed a miracle to come up with a win. That aside, the reason why Zimmer decided to play Mannion was because they didn't have to switch the playbook up much. You saw the exact same playbook they would have called if Kirk Cousins started under center, where it's run, run, screen pass. That's how the Vikings offense operated, and that's how they did with Sean Mannion. And if they had Kellen Mond out there, they would have had to switch up the playbook. But that aside, that doesn't matter. Vikings aren't competing for a Super Bowl anyways. If you look at it, we want to see what Mond's able to do, and that's the reason why you have to play Mond. This upcoming game, yes, Kirk is going to be back, but this next game against the Bears doesn't mean anything. It does not matter. You want to see what Kellen Mond is able to do because, yes, Kellen Mond has looked bad in the NFL. His preseason debut was awful. His debut last night was even worse. But you look at it as a whole, that Kellen Mond we saw at Texas A&M is still in there somewhere, and we're just waiting for that Kellen Mond to come out. And that's why they should start him this upcoming game against the Bears, who both teams are really playing for nothing and are better off losing this upcoming game. And that's why you should play Kellen Mond this upcoming game. That aside, I'm not even mad at Sean Mannion because we expected him to not have a great performance. Now, we expected him to have an awful performance. So with that being said, he looked better than we thought he was going to look. But you know who didn't? And people aren't talking about much? Dalvin Cook. Because we expected the Vikings to run at least 30 times in this game against the Packers defense. Now, the Packers defense, I'll credit them. That linebacker group is insane. And I credit them because I did not expect the Packers to have such a great linebacker room, especially without Zadarius Smith, who is their best linebacker. With Devondre Campbell, Preston Smith, Rashawn Gary, I mean, they're unstoppable. Their 3-4 is unstoppable. Or I guess it would be a 4-3 with them. Is unstoppable. And that's why you look at it. Dalvin Cook is still a top 3 running back in the league, yet he didn't look like it. He had maybe his worst game of his career. Dalvin Cook, 9 carries. 9? Just 9? We expected him to get around 30 for 13 yards. That averages to 1.4 yards per carry. So if you want to credit who was the reason why the Vikings lost this game, it was Dalvin Cook. Because this is the only game in the season where I expected or where I said the Vikings should run the ball a lot more than they usually do. For one, it's the Packers secondary, and for most importantly, you have Sean Mannion starting under center. So for Dalvin Cook to have such a terrible day and to have Sean Mannion exceed his expectations, I mean, just not what we expected to see on Sunday Night Football. What we did expect to see was the Vikings get humiliated, which they did, which, by the way, that was the only game this season that the Vikings lost by more than one score. That just comes to show that the Vikings are better than the record says. We had high expectations going into the season, and I'll admit it, I expected the Vikings to make the playoffs. I expected them to maybe even win their division over the Packers this season. Yeah, well, I put my expectations way too high for this Vikings team because I forgot we have Mike Zimmer as our head coach. We have Clint Kubiak calling the plays. We have Kirk Cousins, an above average, a good quarterback starting under center, but isn't good enough to bring us to a Super Bowl. And it's just facts. It's been 4 years, 0 division titles over those 4 seasons with Kirk Cousins as our quarterback. One playoff appearance, one playoff win where they had to win in overtime. Did we forget what we brought Kirk Cousins in here for? It was to win a Super Bowl. What more do you have to see? I'm not saying Kirk Cousins is bad. I'm saying the Vikings have to look to the future because I want to win Super Bowls. I don't care about just being an above 500 team, which the Vikings haven't been in the Kirk Cousins era. Like I said, the Mond in at Texas A&M is still in there somewhere, and we're just waiting for that appearance in the NFL. I understand he's been awful. He's been terrible in the NFL, but we just have to see what Kellen Mond is capable of because I don't want to wait till the next preseason. Just play him week 18. Week 18 is a worthless game. It means absolutely nothing for this Vikings team. Just play Kellen Mond. Please, play Kellen Mond. I'm not saying you have to start him in 2022. I'm not expecting that to happen. But going forward, we have to look to Kellen Mond as a potential future starter if he continues to evolve. And that's why I want to see him play in the next game. But just a terrible performance from this Vikings offense, and our defense did exactly what we thought that they were going to do. Just get beat all game by Davante Adams and allow way too many yards in the run game as well. We didn't have Nick Vigil in this game. We didn't have Cam Dantzler. We didn't have Michael Pierce. So really, even with those three starters, it wouldn't have made much of a difference because our Vikings defense is awful. They are terrible. And that's just going into this offseason, that's the biggest focus is what the Vikings can do to this Vikings defense because number one, you have to get more outside linebackers. Anthony Barr is going to be gone. Nick Vigil, even if he's here, who cares? You have to look to new outside linebackers. And then also at your cornerback position, where you've been the worst cornerback room in football this season. That starts with bringing back Patrick Peterson and finding him someone who can play alongside Patrick Peterson. And that's important for this Vikings team. But right now, Vikings have been eliminated from the playoffs. And that's why we have to look to the future. We have to. This upcoming game, you have to play Kellen Mond. There shouldn't even be a question about it. Why should Kirk Cousins play this upcoming game? It means nothing. You have to see what your other players are capable of. Sit Kirk Cousins. Sit Dalvin Cook. Let's see what Kene Nwangwu. Let's see what these rookies can do. Let's see what Kellen Mond can do. Oh, let's see what Wyatt Davis can do maybe for once. I have been waiting to watch him. I've been more excited about seeing Wyatt Davis than I have about Kellen Mond. Yet we haven't even seen him play much of anything. He hasn't started one game so far this season and has barely stepped in on the offensive snaps. We have to see more of Wyatt Davis. Oh, what about our other third-round draft pick? Yeah, we had 3 third-round draft pick. Where has Chaz Surratt been? I mean, Nick Vigil just missed a game. We saw Blake Lynch play. That's okay. I mean, I like Blake Lynch, but in this next game, we're not going to have Anthony Barr in 2022. It's not going to happen. Maybe let's see what Chaz Surratt can do. Can we see what some of our other players are capable of? Because this is what I want to see. These Vikings rookies have not played much at all this season. The only Vikings rookie who've played significant time, well, Christian Darrisaw has when he was healthy, is Kene Nwangwu, who's been returning punts and returning kicks, and then also used a little bit on the offense when Dalvin Cook was out with his injuries and out with COVID in the few games he's been out. That aside, we have to look to our Vikings' future, and our future is probably not going to be Kellen Mond. I'm going to cut straight to it. Kellen Mond is not going to be the future starter for this Vikings team. We can hope that he is. We can hope, but we have to plan that he's not going to look good in 2022 and beyond. But we want to see what he can do. We want to see what he can do. We want to see what Kene Nwangwu can do. We want to see what Wyatt Davis can do. That blows my mind that Wyatt Davis once again has not started a game and has barely played any snaps on offense. We want to see what Chaz Surratt can do. We want to see Cam Bynum. I did like the decision of playing Cam Bynum at nickelback. I talked about this in my preview. The Vikings started Cam Bynum over Mackenzie Alexander in this game, which I loved that decision because he's so much better. And I get it. He's a safety playing slot corner, but it doesn't matter. You play the better player. That is important. And that's what Mike Zimmer does not realize. And it's so good to know that he only has one more game left as our head coach. That's what he doesn't realize is experience is not as important as performance. You have to play the better player. You can't play players just because have a lot of experience. They've been in the NFL a long time. That doesn't win you games. You play who's the better player. I don't care if that player's a rookie. I don't care if that player's in his second year. You have to look to it. It doesn't matter. Performance is more important than experience. And that's why we saw Sean Mannion play. Sean Mannion is on his 6th season. The reason why we didn't see him play, the reason why we didn't see Kellen Mond play, was because Sean Mannion is a longtime veteran in the NFL. So I can't say I'm surprised. I can't say I'm surprised after the first few weeks that the Vikings ended up getting another losing record. If the Vikings win next week, they'll be 8-9, and that's 2 straight seasons where the Vikings finished with a losing record. The year before that, the Vikings were barely above 500. I mean, what else is there to see, Vikings fans? You have to face the facts, and that is the facts that the Vikings aren't a Super Bowl contending team with Kirk Cousins. It is just, it's known, it's blatant, it's out there. The Vikings are not contending for a Super Bowl with Kirk Cousins as quarterback. The Vikings aren't contending for a Super Bowl with Mike Zimmer as our head coach. We have to look to the future. Yes, that starts with Mike Zimmer. Yes, that starts with Clint Kubiak. But going forward, you have to look to who can be, at least if you're not going to trade away Kirk Cousins, I'm fine with that. Just don't give him a contract extension. Bring in someone who can play for his job. Now, the Vikings will likely not trade up for Matt Corral or Pickett in the first round. It's probably not going to happen. Knowing Rick Spielman will likely continue to be our GM. It's not going to happen that the Vikings trade up for a quarterback into the top 10. But that aside, maybe if someone falls to us, I'm fine with that. I'm totally fine with that. Just bring in someone who can play Kirk for his job at the very least. That is what I want to see. Someone who can play for Kirk's job. Maybe that's Mond. That's what we expected from Mond. However, Mond has looked terrible. Bring in someone else. Maybe bring in Marcus Mariota in free agency. There's a lot of quarterbacks in free agency who need another shot in the NFL. Marcus Mariota. Mitchell Trubisky. Okay, Mitchell Trubisky's far worse than Kirk Cousins. I get that. But at least he's going to play for Kirk's job. If you bring in Trubisky, someone who can maybe push Kirk to his edge, push him to play better than he's been playing. That is what I want. Marcus Mariota, I that just hit me. That's a good option to bring in Mariota to play Kirk for his job, because that's a player who needs another shot in the NFL. He lost his job in Tennessee when the Titans brought in Tannehill. He lost his job and really hasn't gotten an opportunity to show himself in Vegas. Now, him coming to Minnesota could be a different story. There's a lot of players in free agency. Maybe Josh Rosen. I mean, just bring in someone who you can give him another shot in purple and gold, and that's what I want to see. But number one, you have to look to the future, and it is not Kirk Cousins. I'm just being completely blatantly honest. You have to look at what Kirk has done for this team. Not much. There's not much to look at. Vikings are eliminated from the playoffs in 2 straight years. I love Kirk. I think he's a great guy. He's a very, very talented quarterback as well. But he's not good enough to bring us a Super Bowl. Did we forget what our goal is? Did we forget what we brought him in for? And that's why we have to look to the future for this team. It's probably not going to be Kellen Mond. I'm going to be completely honest. I love Mond. I loved the draft pick to bring him in. Great draft pick. We have to see a lot more from Mond. Vikings player of the game. Never thought I would be saying this in my entire life, but the Vikings player of the game was Garrett Bradbury. Now, credit to Bradbury with that 23-yard reception. No credit to this Vikings team for allowing Garrett Bradbury to be your player of the game, who had a 23-yard immaculate reception 2.0, and that was the largest play of this Vikings offense all game long. He also did a solid job blocking for or protecting for Sean Mannion for a majority of the game, especially when he's going up against Kenny Clark. Got to give him some credit here. I'm not a Garrett Bradbury fan. I think he's a terrible draft pick, and I don't know why Chris Collinsworth kept saying, "Oh, what an athletic center, just a very talented guy." Chris Collinsworth has not watched as many Vikings games as we have. He hasn't watched every Viking snap like a majority of us Vikings fans have. Garrett Bradbury is an awful center. And I don't know what Chris Collinsworth is saying. He's probably just judging him off of his college tape. But that aside, Garrett Bradbury, still got to give him credit. I mean, that was a great reception, and he ran the ball well. He ran the ball very well. Looked like a fullback out there. So never in a million years did I think Garrett Bradbury was going to be a Vikings player of the game, but he was. And that is because the Vikings team looked terrible. Next week, the Minnesota Vikings will host the Chicago Bears for the season ender. I was about to say season opener for the season finale, Sunday, 12 o'clock game on Fox. Now, this game, the only reason why we should be looking forward to this game is because hopefully we can see what our team can do, what our rookies can do. Kellen Mond, Kane Nwangwu. We want to see Amir Smith-Marset. That's another rookie we haven't mentioned. Chaz Surratt. I mean, Cam Bynum. We have multiple rookies who we didn't get to see a whole lot of this season that we want to see in this game, that we need to see in this game, because the future of our team relies on the young guys. And that is just facts. So that's what we hope to see this upcoming game. Amir Smith-Marset, I forgot about that name. That's another player I want to see more of, because we likely won't have Dede Westbrook back. And Amir might be playing for... Amir and Chad Beebe will be playing for that wide receiver 5 role in the next upcoming offseason. So with that being said, we will preview the next game on this Thursday on Morning Kickoff. If you all are listening to that.